Today, we're talking tips, tools, and tricks for recruiting and retention.
We have industry expert and insider Josh Mecca, VP Recruiting at Graham, to tell us more.
Hello, and welcome to Carrier Code, your inside track to the strategies, stories, and leaders driving the trucking industry forward. Today's episode is sponsored by Driver's Legal Plan, CDL ticket defense for professional drivers, and produced by Bulldog, Trucking's podcast pros. I'm Christy Choice, here with my co-host, Rocco Marari. How's it going today, Rocco?
Hey, Christy, it is going fantastic. And I am excited today because we get to cover something you just said, strategies. So we're going to give some insights on some wonderful strategies today to really help your organization grow. We have a fantastic guest, and just be prepared. This is going to be one of the good ones.
Yes, it is. And you know, we very much live in like post-hire world. Like what happens after a carrier has hired a driver, those regulatory updates and changes, all of those types of activities we've kind of focused on in 2025 and so far in 2026. But I think it's really important that we shine a light on some activities that are ongoing, happening all the time with carriers, recruiting and retention. Da, 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 da.
Those are two big ones, R&R.
Absolutely. And so with regard to driver hiring, before getting in the industry, I had no idea that driver hiring was so different. And I'm sure other industries have differences as well, but it is a very different experience. I was once working with someone and they were new to the industry and they were like, this is all foreign to me. Everything I thought I knew about hiring a person, I had to throw it out the window. And I was like, yeah, it's kind of like that, right? You're able to take some things, but other things you just have to learn and kind of lean into learning something different.
Yeah, and you're right. So when I came in the industry, again, it was very foreign to me. And the one thing that really stuck with me is I was told, and I can't remember what conference it was, but drivers will chase the bonus. And, when I was first, getting introduced into trucking, it didn't make sense to me. Why wouldn't you want to stay with a carrier who you can grow with and build out that career instead of jumping, every 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, whatever it may be. But when you're a qualified driver and you don't feel that love that we spoke about in the previous episodes, guess what's going to happen? You're going to chase that bonus.
Yeah.
So carriers, can you blame them at that time if your turnover is high? So we're going to talk a little bit about how we can help you guys fix that.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned strategy. And so I think it kind of boils down to what I like to call a phased approach, right? There are some things that happen on an ongoing basis, like recruiting, of course, but that needs to reflect how you train, coach, develop your internal team as well, right? Because it can lead to burnout, right? It is just the never-ending cycle of contacting a driver and making sure that they're qualified and having these conversations. Some of it never stops, right? But there are smarter ways to approach, training your team, but also how you interact with drivers, because it's a really, really important, right? It also is like marketing. What do you think about that?
And that's a great idea. So you're branding yourself, you're branding your fleet, showing that you have that little extra touch. And again, everybody gets concerned about the spend, and we should, right? We really should. But there's so many different platforms out there where either the spend's not going to be too high, or you can get it for free. So there's a place like Coursera where they'll help you build out your program and provide some of the information that's needed. So we need to make sure, carriers, that we're looking into that when we're doing this. Like you said, Christy, you're marketing, you're branding yourself out here. So you want to make sure that you're ready to go and giving it all you can.
Yeah. And really, not just because we're in quarter one of 2026, but these activities need to be ongoing. And so I go back to kind of that first idea of training. Training is never ending. It's always happening. But training your internal team. I often work with folks and they have one person who's like, a recruiting rock star. Like they are a legend at that carrier because of the ways they can talk and communicate with drivers and get so many drivers into their orientation classes, and they walk around strutting their stuff, and it's wonderful. But you have to share that information, and so that training is a really vital part of it. But also, I've worked with folks who have people on their team who don't exactly know what their hiring standards are, right? And so even training on, hey, this is the job, these are the ins and outs of the job, and making sure you revisit that on an ongoing basis is going to help, because then the recruiters are able to more confidently speak to those positions as they're having conversations with applicants. What do you think?
Yeah, Christy, and that's a great point. And it's a skill set. So like you're talking about the super recruiters, I'm in sales. You have super salesmen. But you also have those recruiters who are great teachers or great, oh God, great people who can help assist in training. And so you have to use and look at the strength of who we're working with and who's on your team, and make sure that you're giving them the best opportunity to be successful and lead. If you have somebody who's a great recruiter, but they're not the best at maybe following up or the entire onboarding process, then, you have to make sure you tweak everything so that recruiter is still successful, bring you the drivers that you need, but you still have all the workflow behind it to get everybody across the finish line. Because at the end of the day, we got to put drivers in the seats as quick as we can, because Christy, you know as well as I do, those drivers, they are getting constantly called, constantly having touch points, and 20 minutes can mean the difference between them sitting in your truck or somebody else's.
Yeah.
I truly believe that because I've seen it.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And so now we're kind of in that second phase of coaching. I'll be honest, I think coaching is kind of hard to come by because it is the activities that surround kind of measuring and then motivating someone. But the goals have to be clear, right? The mission has to be very clear for the right type of coaching to occur. And yeah, I think that coaching is something that we all can stand to get better at. But just like you said, sometimes you have someone who kind of stands out among your team as someone who could easily motivate and help everyone on the team, especially after they've been trained. They know the processes, they understand, how to do the job. And then the next step, coaching them, motivating them, keeping them focused on that goal, is really, really important.
Yeah, you don't want to have those gray areas, especially when we're talking, safety, recruiting, retention. So you have to have those milestones. And Chris, you said it best here. By having that coaching set up, there should be no gray areas. It should be clearly defined what is needed to get to the next level. We do that for the drivers in the onboarding process. So, carriers, let's do that for your recruiting team. Make sure we have those milestones set in place as you're working those drivers and those hires through that life cycle. It will be a game changer because, again, there'll be no gray area and everybody will have that defined touch point and that defined job of what they need to do to be successful.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Now, we have seen in the past when the market is really, really tight and they're trying to fill positions, that the gray area it expands, right? Because
It's blurred.
like we will make exceptions for this driver or for, depending on the circumstances. And so even some of that, I think that really just needs to be reviewed more so that your coaching is more effective, right? So that you as an organization understand, how to navigate the seasonality and, the industry as a whole and what's going on in the overall driver market.
Yeah, Christy, and that makes me think of some previous conversations I've had with safety, personnel, and recruiters, and really a lot of animosity between the two at at different times because of what you just said. Well, in the recruiter's eyes, if we bend this a little bit, we'll fill that seat, and we need to fill those seats. But from a safety perspective, we want the best in those seats. So why are we bending the rules a little bit to fill that seat? And I've seen in the past that does cause that animosity. So, there's times to where if you do have those set goals in place, that hopefully that would put that all away and everybody could work very cohesively together and really for the good of the carrier and the good of the public and get those drivers in a seat and on the road as quick as possible.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's painful for drivers to be in the place of needing another job, right? But what we're talking about here, as far as like training and coaching, we're talking about two things here. We're talking about accountability, but we're also talking
Yes.
about visibility, right? Visibility
Mm-hmm.
into your internal processes, knowing that, yeah, you might be on one team or a different team, right? We may be recruiting in safety or compliance and, talent acquisition, whatever you want to call it, but you're still together collectively representing your organization, right? And like keeping that big picture in mind, right? Because there needs to be a real clean handoff and knowing who has responsibility in different areas, right? It's communication, man. It's communication.
And we always say communication is key. And without communication, we have zero to go on, because then you're all running blind and nobody knows what that next step is. So again, Christy, communication is key. We will drive that home all day long. And I think we're going to hear that here in a little bit with our guest as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, since we're talking about recruiting, I just feel like we just can go for it. With regard to recruiting, some of the most successful teams that I've seen, they have really solid, tight interdepartmental communications, right? They all know the goal. They understand what's at stake. They understand a little bit or enough of one another's worlds so that they can, divide and conquer. What do you think about that?
Oh, 100%. Again, not everybody can do everything by themselves. So you need that team behind you. We do that at Pedigree. We have that divide and conquer mindset. It's the best of both worlds. And the sooner a carrier can embrace that, the sooner everybody embraces that, I think the better off we'll be around, just all around within the industry.
Yeah, for sure. And then collecting that feedback and making sure that as your recruiting efforts continue, you keep an eye on retention. Because again, going back to one of the first points we talked about, it's the first communications that you're having with a candidate are going to shape how that driver sees your whole organization, not just you as an individual.
Yeah, you're going to be their person there. But again, they're looking at the whole totality of that organization. And going back to our earlier episodes, they need to feel the love, not just from you, the recruiter, you, the driver manager, really from the entire organization and the carrier themselves. Make them feel more than just a number. And we spoke about that ad nauseum here, and we do that for a reason. It's important to the drivers. Carriers want that retention. You want to break that churn cycle. So we're giving you the keys to help you do that. So again, as Christy said, make sure those drivers feel loved, because it's going to be a big difference for them.
Yeah, it starts with your internal teams, coaching them, training, developing, kind of revisiting some of those goals that you have as an organization. Well, when we come back, we're going to talk to someone who really knows driver recruiting. It's Josh Mecca from Grammar Logistics.
Carrier Code is sponsored by Driver's Legal Plan, CDL ticket defense for professional drivers. Hey, it's Rocco from Carrier Code. Every professional driver knows how important it is to protect your CDL. A single ticket can put your livelihood at risk, and that's where Driver's Legal Plan comes in. With just a phone call, you can get specialized CDL ticket defense for just $2.98 a week. Don't let a ticket jeopardize your trucking career. Contact Driver's Legal Plan today and let them defend you like they have more than 400,000 other cases. When you need CDL ticket defense, there's only one, Driver's Legal Plan. Call 1-800-580-8789 or visit driverslegalplan.com for your free consultation. Again, that's 1-800-580-8789 or driverslegalplan.com.
Well, welcome back, everybody. Again, we're really excited to have our good friend Josh Mecca, recently promoted VP of Recruiting at Grammar Logistics. Josh is a great industry supporter, but more importantly, he's also a lead ATA graduate.
Well, Josh, welcome to Carrier Code Podcast. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Christy.
Oh my goodness. Well, today we are going to talk through several topics, but first, can you go ahead and just introduce yourself for the folks who don't already know you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Josh Mecca, and I am the Vice President of Recruiting and Retention at Grammar Logistics. And for those of you who don't know who Grammar is, we are a little over 50-year-old company that all we do is hazardous materials, tanker. We deal with the most challenging products on the highways today. Got a little over 500 trucks on the road all across the southeast, eastern seaboard, and expanding out west. So lots of great things in our very near future coming up.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Well, a couple years ago had an opportunity to sit and visit with you and some folks on your team. And so I can directly speak to your wonderful leadership. And so I know some congrats are in order because you're a VP now,
Yeah,
which
thank
is
you.
awesome. You are very, very welcome. So I know we have a few topics that we want to cover today, but I guess I wanted to start out just by asking you, what is your recruiting philosophy if you had to summarize it for the Carrier Code podcast audience?
Oh man, that's a great question. But my philosophy is drivers are people. Drivers are human. Drivers deserve to talk to people. They deserve to have their questions asked. Um, Drivers, if they don't ask questions, then I'm honestly concerned about even recruiting them. Um, it comes down to, we in the trucking space, I believe as organizations have a responsibility to take care of the drivers that entrust us with their future, with their jobs. They trust us to take care of their families, to support them while they're out on the road. And I fully expect my team to be there to answer any questions that drivers calling in have, cover those. But most importantly, understanding too that we're not going to be the fit for everybody. And sometimes we have to have those conversations as well as, hey, I know you really want to come haul this stuff, but we're just not the right organization for you. And that's understanding that not every company is the right fit for every single driver out there. And the companies that do try to be the right fit for every company out there, all they do is cause the turnover that we deal with in the industry.
Yeah.
Every company has their nuances, and if you're in the recruiting space, you really need to understand what that is, or what the nuances of your company are. You need to understand how you operate. You need to understand what you haul, what your legitimate expectations are. You've got to be very upfront, very transparent, and be willing to embrace that you're not a one-stop shop. And at Grammar, like I said earlier, we deal with a very specialized product. We deal with a very dangerous product. And so when it comes to recruiting here, we've got to make sure that everything is lined up, dotted and crossed. And in fact, a driver who's driving for me can literally drive for any company in the country because of how selective we are, how stringent our qualifications are. But that's also going to lead to our next topic and why I'm such a big believer in driver training.
Josh, you brought up, the fact that you guys haul very hazardous materials. I mean, I got to actually stand inside one of your tankers at TTC, which was an amazing experience. You never realize everything that goes along there. So when you're recruiting, let's say we do have listeners who are looking to make that jump into the specialized hauling that Grammar offers. What are some things that these up and coming drivers should be looking at doing in order to get that next level, to be able to drive for a carrier such as yourself?
Yeah, well, I'm actually gonna challenge that statement just a little bit because that's what I like to do. And let's take it back to CDL school, because I like to, talking to Leah Shaver. I love Leah. She's, an excellent lady in this industry. I have learned more from her and her mentorship that she's provided to me over the years. But one thing that she's always talked about is the career path. What's the career path for drivers? Where does it start? And for me, it starts at CDL school. Obviously dealing with the commodities that we work with here at Grammar, I cannot take an entry-level truck driver. Those entry-level drivers are your first-year drivers. I can't do that. For several reasons. First of all, the commodities are just dangerous. Driving a tanker has different physics behind it than driving a dry van, driving a reefer, driving a flatbed. So I have to have drivers that have had road experience before I can even look at bringing them in. So you look at these things and it starts there. It starts at a good CDL school. So anybody that's wanting to progress in trucking, do your due diligence, research your CDL schools, go to your ELDT registry on the FMCSA, make sure your school doesn't have a notice of nonconformance out there. Do your homework, do your research, get your training. Go to a company that's going to treat you well. Go to a company that's not going to treat you like a number. Make sure you're getting your adequate time behind the wheel. You keep your credentials, keep your driving safe, play by the rules, don't speed. You're going to get there when you get there. Proper
Right.
trip planning. It's basic. We're talking the weather earlier. We're going into the winter. Winter is where drivers really get their first set of experience, right? I mean, anybody can drive when it's nice, sunny, and dry, but you start putting some new drivers in snow and everything changes. So it starts there. Take your time. Play by the rules, follow the guidelines, be safe, put extra distance out there, and just keep your credentials safe, right? Keep your credentials, then no one can take your CDL from you.
Yes. And so this next question is about career paths, right? Because one of the things that you've spoken to, Josh, even talking through um, what drivers go through to go through school, CDL school, to become trained, and then they'll start working at a carrier that does accept new CDL holders, but they're getting that experience under their belt, and then at some point they're going to want to level up. So let's talk about like the career paths. And you mentioned Leah. I know that she is really an advocate for driver pay and really kind of mentoring the industry about those types of topics. But I mean, as far as career paths, I've always thought like after CDL school, there needs to be some type of finishing program, and usually that's whatever carrier is going to take that new entrant. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So again, I think that's the misunderstanding with CDL school. And I think you nailed it, Christy. CDL school teaches you to drive a truck. That's it.
Yeah.
And all my trainers used to say, these guys can't drive a truck. They're not professionals. I'm like, of course they're not. That's why I've got them with you for so long. Because I needed my professional drivers to teach them how to be the professional driver. There's so many things that go into it. You got trip planning, you've got weather, you've got your pre-trips, you've got just general directions that people have to figure out. Plus, not to mention all the technology, understanding all the language, all the jargon that we have in our industry. So you've got to have mentors out of the gate through your career. And I've been blessed. I've had several really good mentors in my career. I had a first guy that trained me and been at the same company for 43 and a half years. And he took me under his wing and taught me old school, like pricing tariffs, just going all the way back to the SMC3 days and regulation and kind of the whole story. So, being able to start from that and having a solid foundation has been, I think, probably the most critical part to where even with myself, as I moved from dry van to tanker, I had somebody willing to say, hey, I know you don't know this space, but let's take a chance on you. Let's teach you. Let's give you proper education. Let's give you the chance to learn. And either you're gonna figure it out or you're not, right? Thankfully, if you have the right people investing in you and in your corner and willing to help you get to that next step, that's the support that we need to keep giving our drivers on a day in and day out basis.
Well, I want to talk for a real brief second. We've been talking around training. We've been talking around mentorship, but where training and mentorship intersect is what I want to refer to as the sweet spot, right? Because mentorship isn't just submitting to being mentored, right? It's also the act of finding someone else that you can pour into. And that was like really cool that you said, hey, somebody who had 43 years of experience took you under their wing. And so give some, just encouragement to the folks out there who have such a wealth of knowledge, but they just need to find someone to take under their wing. Like, what does that look like? And what tips would you give to someone who needs to start actively encouraging the next generation of drivers?
So Christy, what I would say is once you've been in trucking for long enough, you remember how your first couple years were.
Sure.
You remember if you had a great start, if you were rocky, if you were, had your ups and downs. And once you've kind of got into it, I kind of joke that it's like Hotel California. You can't get out of it, right? But once you've been in here, and you're successful, there's going to be somebody else that's new. We go to conferences, we see those, but look at the new people at your organization. Look at the new people that have joined our companies. Not all of them have the same background that we do. I mean, I look at who joins us, and there's people that are coming in from different areas, from different avenues. Everybody needs a hand. Everybody needs that assistance. A lot of people aren't going to ask for it. A lot of people will never ask for it, but all it takes is being open, being warm to people, caring about our organizations and wanting to reach out and just just be kind. We be kind to each other. We've got a tough enough job in trucking as it is. We don't need to keep giving it to everybody else. Let's just reach out, just say hi, just be that nice, kind voice. And they're going to start asking questions. And it just kind of, goes back to one of my favorite verses in the Bible, and that's iron sharpens iron and one man sharpens another. Right. So we do that. We do that by just reaching out and being inviting and welcoming and understanding that trucking is a place for anybody that wants to be in this great industry.
Oh, I think that is such an appropriate response because oftentimes what I find is that just being nice, being friendly, being open allows someone who may be struggling with something to be vulnerable. And then, somewhere along the line, they're going to tap your shoulder and say, hey, I do have a question about that. Or can you spend some time showing me this or that? And I always like to say, hey, if you're willing to learn, I'm willing to teach, because I think mentorship absolutely does matter, not just for drivers, but also for your staff internally as well, and kind of showing them the way to go. So that was really, really great.
Most of us are not in trucking by our first choice, right?
Yeah.
I don't know many people in trucking that are in here because of your first choice. I myself, I answered a blind ad a couple years out of college. The company that I applied for didn't want to say they were a trucking company. And that's how I got into
Hey,
trucking.
Josh, can I interrupt you real quick on that? That was something that was important and struck something to me. What brings you back every day? What excites you now? Because you said you weren't planning on being in trucking. Now you're here and you've been here a long time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what keeps you coming back?
Man, trucking's fun. Trucking's fun. It's never the same day twice. To me, it's that profession that it doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care what you are. It doesn't care, uh, gender, creed, nationality. It doesn't. If you get in here and you work hard and you apply yourself and you show up and you're on time and you do things the right way, you've got opportunities in trucking. The truck is a truck. The truck is a machine. You get those stories of people who get into trucking and they always come back and say, man, I wish I found this sooner, because I've seen so many lives changed. I've seen so many generations changed. And, I look at where, like here at Grammar, for example, with where we're spread out, and even, my last job, when we were looking at the entry-level training program, you look at what the average wages of a first-year truck driver are, and they're going to be anywhere from $50 to, $65,000, depending on what your company is. Sometimes more if you hustle. But you can take that $65,000 a year job, and you could put that on any small town in America. And guess what you've done? You've been able to inject that salary into a place that you don't need, to have warehousing. You don't need to have, all this additional billions and billions of dollars spent in infrastructure, because you have a guy that can park a truck in their front yard. So the thing I like about moving to a company like Grammar is you're able to really help those drivers take that next step in their career, and you're able to help increase their earnings because they're getting into something more specialized. And it gives them that step to take that next move, to make that next step on the paycheck, and really help them grow and feel like they're doing something, bigger than who we are.
And Josh, you made mention about a minute ago about drivers and so forth being in a small town, not having to worry about the infrastructure. They can park a truck. How does that relate to you? Because of course, you work remote. So how does that affect, what changes have you seen working remote in your position that can, assist others who are looking to move up the ranks, let's say on the recruiting side? In the past, recruiters, VPs had to be on site. You're showing that that's not necessary. How do you, with the last few minutes here, how do you feel that that's helped you or been maybe a barrier? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think COVID was the great equalizer on that, right? I think when we had COVID, everybody was forced out of an office, and it really changed how we looked at where our people have to be. And, I look at a company like Grammar, we're so spread out that we're not in a centralized location. So, using our technology to connect ourselves, using 10th Street like we do every single day helps keep my team connected. We use Samsara in our trucks, and it helps keep my drivers connected with our McLeod system. So we've been able to use our technology to really connect who we are as an organization. And I think the companies that are going to be the most successful as we continue on are going to be very open-minded to the idea that, hey, people can be anywhere as long as we've got our connections, right? Technology is great. Let's use it let's use it for good.
Well, Josh, thank you so much for being here and sharing with us some of your philosophies from the perspective of a VP in recruiting. This was a really, really great discussion today.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me, Christy, and thank you as always, Rocco.
Yep. Anytime, man.
Wow, that was such a great segment with Josh Mecca from Grammar. Now, if you want to know more about recruiting and retention and want some more tools, tips, and tricks, let us know. Email us at knowthecode@carriercodepodcast.com. We would love to hear from you. Carrier Code is sponsored by Drivers Legal Plan, CDL Ticket Defense for Professional Drivers, and produced by Bulldog, Trucking's podcast pros. New episodes drop every week, so be sure to like, subscribe, and follow so you never miss an episode. You can listen on your favorite podcast platform, watch on YouTube, or visit us anytime at carriercodepodcast.com. You'll also find us on all the social channels at Carrier Code Podcast. Thanks for joining us, and until next week, I'm Christy.
And I'm Rocco.
And this is Carrier Code.